Hey my favorite quilty friends, I have to be honest with you. I made this project up because when I saw the fabric line called Hey Pumpkin by My Mind's Eye for Riley Blake, I just had to have the fabric and I just had to make a project with it. So I've made a Ghost Quilt Block just to use this fabric with, and I think it turned out adorable and I hope you do too. So let me show you how I made it. You can find a copy of these cutting instructions over on my website. I'll put a link down below. I also have a PDF pattern that you might like to purchase, and I'll put a link for that down below too. So on the wrong side of our background fabric, or our C fabric that measures 2 inches by 2 inches, I'm just going to flip it over to the wrong side and draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. And I'll do this on all 3 pieces. Then on our ghost fabric, or our B fabric, that's also 2 inches by 2 inches, I'm just going to match them up right sides together, make sure all the edges are lined up nicely, and then I'm going to sew along each side of my drawn line with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'll do that for all 3 sets. So I've got my 1/4 inch foot on to get my 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm stitching at stitch length 2 and I'm using wonderful confetti thread. And like I said, I'll just sew on each side of that drawn line. I'm just going to sew along the side of each line on all 3 sets at one time, which is called chain piecing, and it just can save a little bit of time. Okay, now I'm just going to carefully snip the little chain so we've got our 3 pieces loose again. Now we're just going to cut along our drawn line on all 3 pieces. Now let's press. Now what I'm going to do is press my half square triangles, but I'm going to press 3 of them one way and 3 the other so I can nest the seams. So for these 3, I'm just going to set those stitches, open it up and press towards our background fabric, or our C fabric. Just finger pressing, making sure we don't have any creases in there. And for these 3 pieces, I'm going to press towards the B fabric, or our ghost fabric. Okay, now let's square up our little half square triangles. So now measuring up our half square triangles so they measure 1.5 inches, I'm just going to take my diagonal line and pop that on top of my seam there. Find the 1.5 inch mark on my ruler, because it's not a 1.5 inch ruler, it's a bigger ruler. So just finding that mark and making sure that my piece is fitting past the lines, and then I'll just cut on both sides. And I'm using a little rotating mat, which is one of my favorite little tools to have. It does help save time, but it's not an absolute necessity. Now I've just flipped it around and I'm going to do the same on this side, placing that diagonal line on the seam, finding my 1.5 inches on both sides, and now trimming off the excess off the side and the top. And I'll repeat that for all 6 half square triangles. So now I've placed all my half square triangles so they match the image above. We want to get this nice zigzag shape down the bottom, which is part of our ghost. Then what we're going to do is sew 2 pieces together, and I've just also made sure that we've got 1 half square triangle with the seams going up and 1 with the seams going down. Remember, I did half one way and half the other. That's so that now when I place them right sides together, those seams nest really nicely. So I'm just going to make sure they're nested nicely, lined up the edges, and then when I'm happy, I will just pop a pin in to keep that in place. And I'll just do that for the remaining 3 sets, and then I'll sew them together, and then I'll sew the 3 sets together. So just sewing along the edge again, removing my pins as I need to, and I will just chain piece these again. Trimming the chains, being careful not to cut the fabric, and then I'll sew these 3 sets together. So now we're going to press the seams, and it's entirely up to you, but I'm just going to press them one way, and I'm not going to even worry about setting the stitches because it's just so little and fiddly. And then I will flip it over to this side and check we don't have any creases in there. And pressing. Okay, and now let's move on to our next step. Now we're going to take our remaining 2-inch squared pieces from our B fabric or our Ghost fabric, plus our 1.5 by 2-inch pieces from our A and our B fabric to create that eye shape. And I'll pop the image up above of what we're trying to do. So just place them all in the correct position. Just like that. So the two 2-inch pieces are on the outer edge. Now I'm just going to sew each of these pieces together until I've created that strip for our eyes. Now let's press. So now if you'd like, you can just set all those stitches. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to press the fabric in towards our center. I'm going to flip it over. Rather, I'm going to press it towards the eyes just because it is black and we don't want that to pop through on the white. So just removing all the creases. Okay. Now let's move on to the next step. So now I've taken my remaining B pieces or our Ghost fabric and I've placed them in the correct order matching our image above. All I'm going to do now is sew each of those pieces together, creating our little ghost. Okay, let's press. So just setting all those stitches. And then what I'm going to do is just press towards the body of the ghost, away from all these seams here. And then away from the eyes, so down to the body again. And then up towards the top of the ghost. Basically just pressing away from all the seams, and I will just give that a once over. Okay. So now on the wrong side of our 1.5-inch square C pieces, I'm just going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner again. Then what we're going to do is just take our little ghost and we're going to pop them on the top corners, and what we're going to do is line up the edges on the corner of the ghost with the corner of that little square we did, and then we're going to sew along our drawn line, and that will create a new corner for our ghost. So what you can do is you can audition the fabric that you're happy with, that's how it will be. Now I probably wouldn't use this side because I don't want the white to run into the pink, or yeah, I think that will look cute on that side like that. So line up your edges, draw that line, and remember we want to sew across the corner. We don't want to place it that way because then we'd sew down and would not be cutting off that corner there. So we just want to pop it on the corner so we can sew across and cut that corner off. So I'm just sewing straight on top of that line, coming right off the edge, and I'll do the same on this corner. So now I'm just going to cut the excess off the corners. So just taking my ruler, placing the 1/4-inch line on top of those stitches and trimming. And I'll do the same on this corner. And now we'll just press those down and into shape. So just setting those stitches, and then I'm going to press them so that the seams come down towards the body of the ghost. I just think it sits a little bit nicer like that. So now I've just placed all my remaining pieces in the correct position, and then what I'll do is I'll sew the bottom and the top on, and then I'll press towards the C fabric, and then I'll sew the sides on, and then again I'll press out towards the C fabrics. Now there's our little ghost block. Isn't that just so cute and adorable? The only thing I would change if I could was probably down here. I probably should have fussy cut those fabrics so that there wasn't so much white, especially in the center one here, because it's really blending in. I wish I'd thought about that first, so keep an eye on that if you're using fabrics that can kind of blend in with your little ghost there. But other than that, I'm super happy with it. So there's so many things you could make with this quilt block. I made this little mini quilt or wall hanging. All I did was add 3.5-inch borders around the whole block, then I basted it, quilted it, bound it. I did add my little wall hanging sleeves on the back, and I've got a video showing you how to do that. I'll put a link down below for you. Actually, I'll put it up above so you can watch it next if you'd like to find out how I did that. You could also make a whole heap and turn it into a table runner, a quilt, a large pot holder. The ideas are endless. Even a cushion would be fun. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching until the very end. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the like button, and even better, the subscribe and the bell. I'd love to see you here again.